The year is 1939, and the world is standing on the absolute precipice of darkness. In the quiet, sterile laboratories of Berlin, German chemists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann have just achieved the impossible. They have split the uranium atom. To the civilian world, it is a fascinating scientific breakthrough, but to a select group of theoretical physicists who have fled the encroaching shadow of Nazi Germany, it is the sounding of an apocalyptic alarm. They understand the terrifying mathematical reality hidden within this discovery. When an atom splits, it loses a minuscule fraction of its mass, converting it into energy according to Albert Einstein's most famous equation, E equals mc squared. It is a microscopic event, but if harnessed into a chain reaction, it could unleash a localized sun on the surface of the Earth. The fear that Adolf Hitler might acquire such a weapon first sends a chill through the scientific community. This terror prompts Einstein and Leo Szilard to draft a desperate, urgent letter to United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt. They warn him that extremely powerful bombs of a new type may thus be constructed. That single piece of paper would alter the trajectory of human history forever, setting into motion an industrial, scientific, and financial undertaking so immense that it practically defies human comprehension. This was the birth of the Manhattan Project, an endeavor that would ultimately represent a trillion-dollar engineering leap in today's terms, designed with one singular, terrifying objective: to harness the fundamental power of the universe before the enemy could. When the United States officially enters the Second World War following the devastating surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, the atomic program shifts from a slow-moving theoretical study into a hyper-accelerated military imperative. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers takes command, and the project is placed in the ruthless, incredibly capable hands of General Leslie R. Groves. Groves is a force of nature, a brilliant but overbearing engineer who had just finished overseeing the construction of the Pentagon. He does not care for theoretical delays. He cares about results, timelines, and absolute secrecy. Groves knows that building an atomic bomb is no longer a problem of physics, it is a problem of unprecedented, gargantuan industrial engineering. To lead the scientific minds, Groves makes a highly controversial choice. He appoints J. Robert Oppenheimer, a charismatic, chain-smoking theoretical physicist with left-wing political ties and no Nobel Prize, to direct the secret weapons laboratory. It is an odd pairing: the rigid military bulldog and the poetic, philosophical scientist, but together they will bend the American economy, landscape, and workforce to their will to build the bomb. The United States practically has to build an entirely new, invisible empire within its own borders. You cannot simply build an atomic weapon in a factory. You need exotic, non-existent materials. You need uranium-235, an incredibly rare isotope that makes up less than 1% of natural uranium. And you need plutonium, a man-made element that has barely been glimpsed in a cyclotron. To acquire these materials, the Manhattan Project seizes hundreds of thousands of acres of land and constructs massive secret cities from scratch. In the valleys of Tennessee, the city of Oak Ridge is born. Almost overnight, it becomes the fifth largest city in the state, housing nearly 75,000 workers. It is a city enclosed by barbed wire, heavily guarded, and entirely absent from any civilian map. Here, colossal electromagnetic centrifuges, known as calatrons, operate day and night because copper is in desperate shortage due to the war effort. The project literally borrows 14,000 tons of pure silver from the United States Treasury to wind the magnets for the calatrons. The operators of these massive machines, mostly young women fresh out of high school, have absolutely no idea what they are producing. They are simply told to keep the dials pinned at a specific number. The compartmentalization is absolute. The guy pouring the concrete does not know what the pipe is for. The person adjusting the valve does not know what flows through it. Thousands of miles away, in the desolate desert of Hanford, Washington, another secret city rises. Here, the project constructs the world's first full-scale nuclear production reactors. The engineering required to build these facilities borders on science fiction. The B reactor at Hanford is a monstrous graphite-moderated machine designed to bombard uranium with neutrons to breed plutonium, pumping thousands of gallons of freezing water from the Columbia River to cool the reactor core. The facility is an alien landscape of towering exhaust stacks, massive concrete shielding, and deadly radiation. The men and women working at Hanford are pioneering an entirely new field of nuclear engineering, solving problems on the fly that no human has ever encountered. They are working with toxic, highly radioactive materials, inventing containment protocols, remote handling equipment, and radiation detection gear from thin air. The sheer scale of the labor is staggering. Over 130,000 people are employed by the Manhattan Project at its peak, yet only a few dozen actually know the true end goal. It is an industrial miracle, absorbing nearly $2 billion of 1940s money, an astronomical sum that, when accounting for the proportion of GDP, massive infrastructure development, and sheer technological advancement, equates to $1 trillion leap into the future. Yet all the uranium and plutonium in the world would be useless without a mechanism to trigger it. For that, the materials are shipped to the most secret location of them all, Site Y high on a mesa in New Mexico. Surrounded by canyons and endless desert lies Los Alamos. Here, Oppenheimer has gathered the greatest concentration of scientific genius ever assembled in one place. Nobel laureates walk the dirt roads, working frantically behind heavy military security to design the mechanism of the apocalypse. The atmosphere at Los Alamos is one of extreme, suffocating pressure. As 1944 bleeds into 1945, the geopolitical landscape violently shifts. Nazi Germany, the original terrifying impetus for the bomb, is crumbling under the weight of Allied advancement and finally surrenders in May 1945. Yet, the Manhattan Project does not slow down. It accelerates. The Pacific War against the Japanese Empire has evolved into an absolute bloodbath. The battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa reveal a terrifying truth. The Japanese military will not surrender under conventional circumstances. They will fight to the last man, utilizing kamikaze tactics and civilian militias. American military planners estimate that Operation Downfall, the proposed mainland invasion of Japan, could result in up to 1 million American casualties and tens of millions of Japanese deaths. The new president, Harry S. Truman, who had only just been informed of the atomic project upon Roosevelt's sudden death, is looking for a way to force an immediate, total Imperial surrender. The weapon at Los Alamos is no longer just a theoretical deterrent. It is deemed an absolute military necessity. But the scientists at Los Alamos are facing a catastrophic design failure. The plutonium they have painstakingly produced at Hanford is highly reactive. They realize that their original gun-type design, which would shoot two pieces of nuclear material together, will cause the plutonium to pre-detonate and fizzle out before a full nuclear yield is achieved. To solve this, they must invent something radically new, an implosion device. The implosion design requires arranging explosive lenses in a perfect sphere around a subcritical core of plutonium. These explosives must detonate at exactly the same microsecond, sending a perfectly symmetrical shockwave inward to crush the plutonium core into supercriticality. The mathematical and engineering precision required for this is almost impossible by 1940s standards. They are trying to squeeze solid metal like a sponge using high explosives. To test if this profoundly complex mechanism will actually work, they need a full-scale trial. They call this test Trinity. On the morning of July 16, 1945, in the Jornada del Muerto desert of New Mexico, the culmination of the greatest engineering leap in human history sits atop a 100-foot steel tower. They call it the Gadget. A massive lightning storm delays the test, heightening the already agonizing tension. Scientists who have dedicated years of their lives and billions of American dollars wait in concrete bunkers. Some place bets on whether it will ignite the atmosphere and destroy the world. Others bet it will be a complete dud. At 5:29 a.m., the countdown reaches zero. In a fraction of a millisecond, the firing circuits close. The explosives detonate perfectly. The plutonium core is crushed, and the atom splits. What happens next defies all human reference points. There is no sound at first, only light. A flash so incredibly bright that it illuminates the surrounding mountains, as if it were high noon, blinding scientists looking through dark welders' glass miles away. Then comes the heat, a sudden, scorching wave that bakes the desert floor, fusing the sand into a radioactive green glass called trinitite. Finally, the shockwave hits, a deafening, chest-crushing roar that shatters the silence of the desert. Echoing off the mountains like the hammer of God, a massive, churning ball of fire rises miles into the stratosphere, morphing into a terrifying, glowing mushroom cloud. In the control bunker, J. Robert Oppenheimer watches the monstrous creation ascend into the dawn sky. A piece of Hindu scripture from the Bhagavad Gita runs through his mind. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. They have done it. They have fundamentally altered the relationship between humanity and the universe. The success of Trinity seals the fate of the Japanese Empire. Weeks later, after Japan ignores the Potsdam Declaration's demand for unconditional surrender, the order is given. On August 6, 1945, the B-29 bomber Enola Gay drops the uranium bomb Little Boy over the city of Hiroshima. The destruction is unprecedented in the history of warfare. A single plane with a single bomb erases a city from the map in a fraction of a second. Yet, the Japanese military command hesitates, unable to comprehend the nature of the weapon and unwilling to accept defeat. 3 days later, on August 9th, the plutonium bomb Fat Man, the direct descendant of the Trinity Gadgeties, dropped on Nagasaki, unleashing even greater destructive force. The shock of these twin atomic strikes, combined with the sudden Soviet invasion of Manchuria, breaks the deadlock within the Japanese high command. Emperor Hirohito, recognizing that continuing the war would mean the total obliteration of the Japanese nation, takes the unprecedented step of personally intervening and broadcasting his surrender to the people. The trillion-dollar gamble has succeeded. The sheer, overwhelming magnitude of American scientific and industrial power has forced a total imperial surrender, bringing the deadliest conflict in human history to a violent, abrupt end. The Manhattan Project leaves behind a legacy of duality. It was the absolute pinnacle of human collaboration, engineering, and scientific genius, a magnificent triumph of the mind. But it also unlocked a terrifying Pandora's box, handing humanity the blueprint for its own ultimate destruction, and plunging the world forever into the shadow of the atomic age.